Some of you may be familiar with Kabbalah. And unfortunately, how you're familiar with Kabbalah is probably not a very good, accurate understanding of it. The reason is Kabbalah is actually a historical way of understanding Judaism, religious traditional Judaism. But unfortunately, in the middle to late 20th century, it became more of a type of self-help, new agey, feel-good talismans and stones, and a very different interpretation of Kabbalah. Now, there were some remnants of a Jewish, Hebrew use of things, but when it became something that Madonna and other celebrities tried to use, it was no longer the Kabbalah of history. And the reason I say that is because historically, Kabbalah was reserved for very religious male Jews, elderly Jews. Madonna is neither Jewish nor male, nor are some other celebrities. Now, the rationalization is that, oh, well, you can still glean from some of these ideas and concepts. But up until the mid-20th century, Kabbalah was very much an exclusive way of learning the Old Testament, what would be considered the Old Testament, or the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures. And it was essentially something that was taught from teacher to student, a older, well-educated in Judaism rabbi who would teach it to his students. And it wasn't something that was put out into the public by any means. I mean, people were encouraged to try and strive after it, but it was in no way put out as a mass type of philosophy or self-help study. It became that way for those who wanted to profit from it and sell little trinkets or amulets or things that would make people feel as though they had some type of connection with a deeper mystical philosophy. And so understanding the basis of Kabbalah is to know that first and foremost, it was reserved for very religious male Jews who spent years and decades perhaps studying religious Judaism, traditional Judaism. And there is a whole history behind it in the Middle Ages and in Spain with certain rabbis, and even before that, BC, AD, that at some point I may develop that history a bit more. But as way of understanding an introduction to Kabbalah, it is important to point out that when somebody speaks about Kabbalah in our times, very rarely are they actually speaking about real Jewish Kabbalism. Oftentimes, it's a very diluted, different bastardization, I use that word objectively, of what Kabbalah is supposed to be. And I say this from somebody who attended a Jewish university, who was not Jewish myself, and had a very big awakening from some of the rabbis there, some of my classmates, and it became kind of an ongoing joke of the poor saps who who were duped into believing that they were actually studying Kabbalah when they really weren't. Now, some of the Kabbalistic ideas can be used and applied in other ways and other forms. And I'll explain that at another time. But for the most part, 85, 90, 95% of the time, most of what is understood and put out there in the public is not actual Kabbalism.